Hmm? Ah!
You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode is the Australian psychological horror film, The Babadook. Written and directed by Jennifer Kent, released May 22nd, 2014.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Very good on your Babadook. Good job. I haven't watched this one since it came out, so it was fun to go back and revisit it.
Yeah, it's been quite a while for me too, so I knew I was in for a dark, depressing run, but I forgot about a lot of the other, some of the little things in this movie I forgot about, so it was interesting to revisit for sure.
Yeah, I liked it. We always come up with a list of movies that we might pull from. In this case, we've been talking about this one for probably the last 6 weeks and saying, oh, we got to do it. Well, we finally are, and I'm excited. Even though, as you said, this is a really dark one, and yeah, there's a lot to digest in it.
Yeah. So, since it's such a heavy movie, I figure should my notes kind of still be just all jokes to really raise the fun, or does that just not really work for what we're doing with this one? No, we'll talk about some heavier themes, but I'm not going to say that it's jokeless.
Oh,
because
boy.
I can't do that. I don't think that's possible.
Well, you could, but it wouldn't be you.
No.
And having just spent 2 days with you this past week, yeah, there's always lots of jokes.
That's all I can do. Just jokes and jokes.
Well, let's get started the way we always do with a few production notes. Filming for this one took place in Adelaide. It is based on Jennifer Kent's 2005 short film Monster, and this is her directorial debut. The budget was $2 million, and it grossed $10.5 million at the box office. It's 94 minutes. Pake, bring us a synopsis.
All right. A single mother and her child fall into a deep well of terror when an eerie children's book titled Mr. Babadook manifests in their home.
Yeah, this book wasn't like any other book I've ever read, or I remember reading as a child.
Mm-hmm.
It's very creepy.
Yes. Not a really big life lesson in there. Usually kids' books have some kind of little lesson or there's an educational aspect to it. I guess it's teaching them that they're about to be in for a horrible death. That's about all it's teaching them. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think that... Yeah, I think you're right. There was no moral to this story. It's not like The Tortoise and the Hare or, any of the books like that. No, this one was quite terrifying right from the beginning. Although it tried to ease into the terror and make you kind of think it's a friend. And then it becomes no, because you're going to wish you're dead. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of good creepy mental, the psychological horror and stuff. But then we'll get to it when we talk through the movie and stuff. But then there actually is quite a uplifting message in the end, if it can be looked at that way. I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get to that. But of course, how we usually break these things down, character-wise, even though there's really just one character to really focus on, and that is Amelia. I do have a little bit of notes separate for just kind of Samuel a little bit and stuff like that. And then, yeah, the Babadook itself. But this is one of those movies, yeah, where it's mostly we're just going to be following Amelia through what's going on here.
Yeah, poor Amelia. Poor Amelia, right from the start. She's just so traumatized, even though it's been, 7 years since her husband passed away?
Just
And
about.
the reasoning behind it was a car accident. He was taking her to the hospital to give birth to Sam. The issue with that is it's grief. I mean, there's grief, I think. In this movie, there's such a manifestation of it.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole movie, you see
I think it goes
her go through this.
Beyond grief, even. Because, I mean, grief definitely lingers, but then it takes form of depression.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about that stuff, a little bit later as far as how that really manifests itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's these, like, lingering, depression that comes from trauma, from grief, that just sits and lingers. Yeah, because we pick up on her. I mean, she's just struggling to raise her son on her own. He's very rambunctious, which any 6-year-old is gonna be.
Absolutely.
But he's got a, very active imagination. He's caught up even before the stuff with the Babadook happens, this idea of fighting a monster. And, he is very 6-year-old boy. Comes with its share of loud noises and broken things and,
Yeah.
the stuff that any parent's gonna have to deal with, but it's the fact that she's dealing with that and he's kind of on the extreme end of that, and then also just with the grief and depression and things she's carrying along with her. It's a lot, and you see pretty early on that, like, even if it's just subconscious, because of the way that her husband passed, there almost is this deep within her that it doesn't come out into words until the Babadook actually says it through her.
Yeah.
But there's this deep subconscious kind of blaming of Samuel for, there's this is like, well, if I wouldn't, if you wouldn't have been in my womb and I wasn't being taken to the hospital to deliver you, then this wouldn't have happened.
Exactly.
And so she has this kind of thing with him because, like, he is very physically affectionate. He's always wanting to hug on her and, like, rub her face and kind of grab, kneading on her, like, neck. And, like, he's a very affectionate kid. And early on, you see her literally just kind of snap at him and say, "Don't do that." And it's like, where
she doesn't want
he's
that at
literally
all.
just hugging you. Like, I don't know, that's kind of adorable. What's wrong with you?
I know. And I was always like that as a kid. I don't know about you, but it's like you just cuddle, you just, your parents, they're your world. They're the ones that protect you and you just want to be close to them. And she just doesn't return the affection at all. And I just felt for him because he wants her affection. He wants her attention. He wants to make her happy. He's a typical kid, but she's just not having any of it because she's still stuck in this mental place of what seems like, as you said, blaming her son for the death of her husband and you can tell she's still in mourning over the loss of him.
Yeah, she tells her sister that, I assume, is Auntie Claire, so either her sister or her sister-in-law, they don't really clear it up 100%, but...
Right.
But Claire here, I mean, she tells her, I have moved on, I am over it, I don't talk about it, and, like, clearly, she's just in denial, she's pushed it down, but she's not over it, for the fact that they have this conversation at the park, where she's literally never celebrated Sam's birthday on the actual day because it's the day that her husband died. So even, for 6 years, she shuts down on that day. So clearly you're not over it if you can't celebrate a birthday on that day. If you can't function, you haven't moved on. You haven't gotten over it.
Yeah.
You can tell yourself that, but clearly you haven't.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem. And I think she realizes it, but it doesn't occur to her to push through, really. She just wants to continue doing things the way that they are. Because I'm not sure she really wants to go to that place to deal with the grief. Even though if she started to process it and started to get through it, she would feel better. When you lose someone in your life that you love that much, it's not going to be easy to process through it. But you do learn to cope.
Yeah.
And she's just not coping at all.
I know, through like the first half of this movie, I'm just like, keep thinking in my head. I was like, I don't know, because if the supernatural aspect, this, Babadook monster is real,
yeah,
then I don't know how well it's going to work for that. But I was like, but as far as the other stuff, like half the movie, I'm sitting there going, so much like could be helped by therapy. She needs therapy. He needs therapy.
Yes.
They together need therapy. Like,
yes.
Talk to somebody. Get help.
Yeah. Exactly. It's so obvious. And I think, on the one hand, we get this full story of going through the grief, but the underlying process of visualizing, facing demons and facing the things that you haven't dealt with and how it can manifest visually was kind of stunning to me.
Mm-hmm.
The metaphors, I think, for each of the pieces, it kind of blew me away, and it made me think about my own way of grieving a bit, because I lost my father, which is not the same as what she was going through in this movie, but it's still, I lost a person in my life who was of big importance. And it makes me think about how I went through that process of learning to cope. And I just looked at it differently. I watched the movie twice, like a week ago, and then I watched it again today in preparation to record. And I feel like it's one of those movies that the more I watch it, the more I'm going to notice and the more I'm going to think about and see things that I may not have noticed before. And then try to analyze it. This movie, there's a lot in it. It's a lot more than a woman grieving a husband. There's just, it's the processing piece of it.
Well, it's this, as like clingy and attention starved really that Sam is. And she's got him just like attached to the hip every chance that he can. She's still incredibly lonely. I mean, we have the scene, where she's sitting there watching TV alone and just this old romance movie comes on and she's, you get the like vibrator. So, it's like even this little like moment of like pleasure and relief is interrupted by this kid's nightmare, at least the way she sees it at that point. And it's like, and at that point it's all over because now all the attention is back on him once more. Every little bit of herself that she could have is being kind of funneled into him, and she's already on empty. She doesn't have what it takes to even put into him. Yeah. And then we see at work. Work is just, she's an empty shell at work. She doesn't care about her job at all. She's at this retirement home. She's just going through the motions on autopilot. The only light she has there is her coworker, Robbie, who will like make jokes with her and check in on her and covers for her to let her leave early and stuff. And it's like, you almost hope after this movie ends that like something happens there. Like you're like, she needs something good.
I know, because he does make her laugh, and you see her, the interaction she has with him, you see her light up just a little bit. You see a glimmer there. And you just want that for her because she is just so alone. Because, being lonely is one thing and being alone is something different. Yeah. And I feel like she's both. I mean, I think she has a son, but I think she feels very much alone. It's like she doesn't really have a support system. If you look at her sister, I think it's her sister or sister-in-law, she's not really a support system. She, was like talking about her moving on. There's no timeline for how long it takes a person to process through.
Oh, and I could not stand the character of Claire. Like, they're at the birthday party, at Ruby's birthday party. And just the way that she's like, I was like, okay, your judgy ass can fuck right off. Yeah. Like, when she can't get Samuel to, like, let go of her, it's like, oh, he's tired. And then he's, like, whining. It's like, go play. And then just the way she, like, rolls her eyes and looks like, just looks down at her. And then her friends are all, just saying the most like ridiculous stuff. And I'm like, yeah, she's terrible. So it's like, maybe it's good that you kind of cut her out for a while.
Yeah. I think it's another indication of just how alone she is.
Yeah, and so that she has that little moment where I was like, good for you. Go off a little bit. Where she snaps a little bit, like not crazy, but just butts into that conversation. Oh no, what a tragedy. You don't have time for the gym anymore. How do you cope?
Yeah.
Like
Exactly. It's
must be nice to have those kind of problems.
Exactly. Yeah. You must have so much to talk about with those poor disadvantaged women, the ones that she was talking about helping.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, again, like I said, there's a difference. Like, she's lonely for that companionship, but she's also very much alone, except for the very sweet neighbor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but even when she gets off of work, she gets a nice little much needed respite ice cream cone that doesn't last long, because right from there she's back in her car and she sees the couple in the car across the parking lot, and that lingering loneliness just hits her again. And then she looks at her phone and it's these missed calls, because Samuel's handing down Babadook nightmares to his cousin.
I honestly was not upset, because all I could think is, you know what? Claire deserves to have to deal with that shit. She really does. I think that everything like that, like the couple kissing in the car and these old romantic movies, I just think they just remind her she constantly is faced with everything she lost.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't get enough of seeing them together, her and Oscar, to really understand their relationship. But you just get this picture from what we do get, that they were very much in love, and she was pretty much destroyed. Yeah,
even though it's traumatizing and terrorizing when we see that, because it's the Babadook, like, using his form to get into her head.
Mm-hmm.
But he's using, I assume, the exact words and stuff that were said right before he died, which is literally, like, he's driving her there and he's, like, fully supportive. Like, let me lean your chair back a little bit. And, like, we only got, like, we'll be there in, like, 10 more minutes. And I think it's gonna rain. So, like, he's just very attentive and very... And so you can see, like, she almost, like... She probably felt like she had the greatest husband in the world. Mm-hmm. And she was so ready to start just an amazing family. And everything was, everything was going Amelia, and then she lost it all, and she's just never been able to get back any footing.
No, and every day is a reminder of everything that she lost, and she wallows in that feeling of loss. She can't move past it. And I don't know if it's because she doesn't really know how to get past it, or if she is afraid to work to move on because she doesn't want to lose those memories or look at that. Or maybe she thinks moving on is disrespectful to his memory because they had such a deep connection and love. It's really hard to tell. I felt watching this, like, I tried to look at it, like, psychologically, because it just paints this picture, and all you want to do is give her a hug. Let her sit down and put her feet up for 5 minutes. I mean, she's just faced with the mundaneness of her job and her life just being nothing better, just feeling like she can't get ahead. She can't move. She's stuck. She's stuck in a place of unhappiness, a place of sorrow, and a place of sadness.
Yeah. And then, when we finally start getting some action, something different happening in her life, it's definitely not what she would have asked for.
No.
And at first she just thinks, like, what's wrong with my kid? Like, he has gone completely psychopath. Like, what's happening? Like, you got, even without the supernatural stuff being true, before she even knows anything about that, it's just got to be a scary situation where you're sitting there eating dinner and there's glass shards in the soup, and as far as she knows, the kid definitely did it. And he's sitting here going, oh, the Babadook did it. And she's like, oh my God, what is happening? What am I in for with, like, now it's becoming like he's now going to be capable of doing something really bad and he won't even realize the severity of it. Like, is he some kind of like complete sociopath that, so now she's just having to deal with all of that. And the book, she's like, did the book trigger all these things? So, you know, we have the collapsing closet conundrum, band name called it. And then, so she takes the book and just like tears it up and throws it in the trash. Which, when she first put it on top of that wardrobe, I'm like, you should have just thrown it away in the trash the first time. I don't know why you're even holding on to it.
I looked at that as how you deal with depression.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
If you put it away, push it away. You try to push it out of your head.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you think if you push it way up here, you're not going to think about it. But then it creeps back in. And so, of course, it creeped back in. And even if you try to tear it up, it's still going to find a way. Because you're not addressing it. You're just kind of putting a Band-Aid or a blanket over it. It's like when she's laying in bed and she covers her face. It's like, you know something's out there, and you don't want to look at it, but covering your face,
make it go away.
Yeah, it's not going to make it go away.
Yeah. Man, and it just spirals. Like, it just gets worse and worse, and then you get the scene where she's at the doctor after Sam has this, like, seizure. And you see her talking to that doctor just how much of a toll all of this is taking on her. She's begging the doctor for sedatives to give to Sam. Just flat out says, I'm not coping. It's really bad. And she's like, I need something. And it's sad to see her point of view versus what you know is going on because of, you know, what this movie is. Yeah. So you see her, the way she's looking at her son, but then on the other side, you're like, he's being completely honest. He's seeing things that she can't. And he's truly trying to be brave and protect them. And he's trying to, like, he's putting on the bravest, not even just a brave face. He's literally, I mean, he is a little warrior. Like, he's just like, all right, like, you might not see what's going on, but I'm about to go kick this monster's ass. Like, all right, let me grab my ball launcher and I'm going to go murk somebody. Let's do this, you know?
I loved his little inventions that he was, you know, he's like setting all these things up and he's got a dart thrower of some kind, like, to shoot darts. And you can tell that he's got quite an imagination. Mm-hmm. And she kind of puts up with it, but the whole time I'm just thinking, this is a kid that you want to foster that imagination. It might come off that he's precocious, but oh my God, I love seeing how his mind works with these things that he's putting together. He's doing everything he can. Again, he wants his mother's affection and attention, and I think he looks at himself as the little man of the house.
Yeah. Because, I mean, he says, you protect me and I'll protect you. Like, we're, you know, that bond that he wants to build.
It broke my heart because there was a point in there where he yelled at her and just says, you won't even let me have a dad. Mm-hmm. Because he wants that too. Like, he wants someone in his life, a male figure in his life, a parental figure in his life. Not just his mom, you know, not just his mom, but another parent. And you want that for him. The whole time you're just thinking she just needs support system so desperately. And there's no one except for her friend from work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that scene with the doctor, and then, she gets the sedatives. The doctor gives her enough for a week to get test results back and stuff. And then as soon as she wins, then it's like a step back, like one step forward, 2 steps back, right? Where then, like, she gets a win and then everything falls out from under. Like, you see her, like, wake up that next morning feeling amazing. She's like, holy shit, I actually got rest. She goes and, like, checks on Samuel. Is like, he's still asleep. Like, what a beautiful morning. You know, it's like, she's, everything's better. And then it's immediately ruined by this pounding at the door. And the book that she had torn up and threw out is just dropped right there at the doorstep with new ominous messages showing her that it plans to possess her, and it has all these cute little paper animations of her killing the dog and then her son and then herself. What a thoughtful gift, right?
Isn't it?
So So she's like, yeah, I'm gonna just burn this shit. Gonna have a backyard barbecue. A dook out, if you will.
Oh my gosh. That was a good one.
Told you, they're in here. Very few and far between, but they're in here. Yeah, followed up by the creepy phone call from the Babadook. Just, wanting to have a chat. And that leads her immediately to go to the police, who literally could not have been less helpful if they tried.
And you could tell at this point, though, too, even though she got plenty of rest, I feel like she's starting to see the Babadook in everything.
Yeah.
Because she's looking around the police station and she just sees all these things that make her almost think like the police are involved somehow. And
right.
It's just kind of like, okay, so again, she's alone. There's no one to help her.
Yeah, and then it piles and builds, and it's a quick downhill slope. An unfortunate side effect of all the horrific mental torture being piled into her life is she's even getting snappy with the sweet elderly neighbor.
Mrs. Roach was the best. She really was.
Yeah.
She wanted to do whatever she could do to make life better for Amelia and Sam.
Mm-hmm. And then everything, all of the last remaining threads are just snapping one by one. Like child services shows up at the worst time where she feels like she's losing it. Sam is sitting there on the couch telling them all about how she's drugging him. And while she's in the middle of frantic cleaning mode after the roach hole that doesn't exist opened up, and she's just... It's not a great look for her in that moment at all.
She's trying to hold it together, though, but it's really difficult because she's seeing things. And that's one of those things. When you are sleep deprived or, completely stressed out, depressed, and the anxiety is flaring, you're seeing stuff. Like, it's a mess. It's a symptom of the situation.
Yeah, the electricity just keeps crackling and flashing every time things are getting weird. And I noticed when she's in bed, one little shot that I noticed is because, the closet door is closed and then, the lights crack and then the doors open. And there's the mirror in the back of the closet that she's looking at, which just shows her sitting in the closet, which is quite an interesting little foreshadowing of what, the Babadook book is saying is going to happen, because in the first time they look at the book, the Babadook comes out of the closet, and now she's in the closet in the place of the monster. It's kind of this...
It's kind of showing you what's going to happen. It's connecting everything, because you think about the Babadook as a creature or as the monster, but really, I looked at the Babadook as this is the grief monster, and it's her grief. It's obviously going to be her. But the first time I saw it, I had no idea until I got through the whole thing. And then, revisiting it now, again, I had a lot more thoughts on it and how it connected with that.
Yeah, and then that's when she has that really terrible encounter where she thinks maybe just a bad dream, but definitely scares her enough to take Samuel downstairs with her. With the Babadook, actually just coming into the room and climbing around on the ceiling and finding its way, into her. And then she does change slowly. We see, she's just saying some of the most horrific things to Sam. And then she kind of snaps out of it and goes to him, and she's blaming this lack of sleep for her negligence and cruelty, and comes to her senses and well, let's go out to eat somewhere. And then that scene they're at, Wally's is this place, this restaurant. Yeah. Where it's really this interesting flip side of what we've seen of them so far, because this family that's sitting behind them is the girls are all rambunctious and the mom's sit down, shut up. And for once, Sam is just quiet and sedate and just sipping on his drink and just sitting there as quiet. A good little boy, we've never seen this from him. And
no, we haven't.
It's almost just this idealistic kind of thing. But I feel like it's just he's seeing changes in her, and he's scared of her.
Yeah. I don't think he quite knows what to think of the situation because, like you said, she just hasn't been kind to him. We really haven't seen a lot of kindness. And so this was a complete flip.
Yeah.
And he's just, I'm not sure he even knows what to make of it. He's just kind of going along for the ride, I think, for, what's happening.
Yeah. And it doesn't stay good for very long after that.
No.
That's when I guess you would say she really just starts to lose it, what it looks like. I mean, when they're driving back in the car, that's like with the Babadook climbing around on the car and the roaches on her in the car. And then, that's when they go to the doctor and stuff like that. But then she's sitting there in the bathtub fully clothed and pulls him in there with her. And then, all right, bedtime. I'm going to take my violin to bed and cuddle with it. And don't you dare touch it or I'm going to yell at you. Like things that just don't even make sense. It's like her brain is just like fractured. Because she was starting to see, I think, what Sam's been seeing the entire time. Like, he was already seeing the Babadook. That's why he was almost incensed the entire time. Like, he was always on edge, I think. It's because he was seeing this, and now she's starting to see it. Yeah.
And I think the violin belonged to her husband, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think he was a musician, because there's a lot of sheet music and everything down in the basement.
Yeah, and so she was trying to get close to her husband. I think she was grieving. She's going back to revisit the grief again. And, I mean, poor Sam, he never met his father. Like, he wants to help his mom, but he doesn't know what to do. Like, there's nothing he can do because the way that she acts, it's so much like it's his fault for everything.
Yeah.
And he can't fix that. He can't change it.
Yeah, I mean, he calls Mrs. Roach in the middle of the night just because he doesn't know what to do. And then that just sets Amelia, but really
the Babadook,
this monster inside her. And she's like, I just didn't want you to let it in. And it's like, well, she didn't really let it in per se, but it's in for sure. In. I mean, she's sitting there wielding a knife at him, cuts the phone cord, locks up all the doors and windows. She's saying these cruel things to him again. Like, there's this whole different side of her that is coming out. And, within the confines of the story, it's like she's being possessed. The Babadook is, like, controlling her. But, and then she's able to slip back out from time to time. But that's why she's watching the TV there, just kind of disassociating, really. She just, like, who knows when she's awake, when she's asleep, what's real, what's not. But the wolf in sheep's clothing cartoon on the TV is very fitting. But then there's like it's almost like disassociation. She's sitting there staring at the TV, and next thing she looks over at the couch and Sam is laying there dead. But then she kind of flashes back and he's not, but she's standing over him with a knife, and it's like, how do you even learn to cope with that and balance yourself mentally after something like that? Like, it's
I think it just makes you realize how bad it really is. That it's not just, okay, I haven't been getting enough sleep. There's some serious stuff going on with me that's wrong, and I could hurt my son.
Yeah, I mean, even the stuff on TV is like, even like just the images and the dialogue and the programs on TV are all disturbing in different ways. And then there's the news report about this mother murdering her son on his 7th birthday, which is like the next day. And then she sees herself in the window on the TV, and it's, she doesn't know what's real, what's not, who she is, she's completely engulfed and taken over by this.
She is. And all you want for her is for her to get through. To let Sam in, maybe, that might help. Because she won't let him in, and maybe letting him in will, like, spark something in her to change where she's at. But that's not what we get.
Yeah. It's, there's, this tooth pain that's been bothering her ever since the change. And then finally she just pulls her tooth out. And I was watching that scene and I was like, I wonder if there's a metaphor in there of, maybe she's infected to the roots.
Yeah.
But, the root of the infection being depression and helplessness that she's been drowning in for all these years. So even, the Babadook is real at face value. There's still something that would cause it to target Amelia. And there's that root that's there.
Yeah.
And then after... I'm not even going to talk about the dog. We're not even going to talk about Bugsy.
Let's not, because that was very, very sad.
Yes. But then after that, and then she's going after Sam, and at the point where she's, climbing on the walls and on the door and kicking it in and screaming, "Let me in," like the big speech bubble in the book, and you're like, oh, she's gone full Duke.
Yep. Sam can't get through to her. There's nothing he can do. She just keeps wanting to get him. And, yeah, it was scary. I was scared for him.
Yeah. Honestly, this is kind of a note for him, but it fits in here, too. I was like, she's trying to, calm him down. Gives his best Kevin McAllister. Well, yeah, the dart gun, the ball launcher, trip rope into the basement stairs. He's got all of it. I think, of course, again, it seems she's back to herself, where she's just like, oh, I'm sorry, and this and that. But then there's the one line that kind of ekes itself out, where she says, I just want you to meet your dad. And then as soon as she says that, he knows that's not her.
Mm-hmm.
And down to the basement, trips her up, knocks her out, ties her down. Again, this kid is
he's so
capable.
Smart. He's so capable.
But I think the saving grace was that through all of that, he loved her.
No matter what.
So deeply. Tells her, I'm not going to leave you. I'm not running off. I'm not going anywhere else. I'm staying right here. You can scream at me. You can cuss at me. You can threaten me. I'm staying right here. But then you tell her, you need to get it out. And, he goes over there to kind of help her out, and that's when she's grabbing him and choking him out there. And again, like I said, he's always been very physically affectionate, even though she doesn't like that for whatever reason. But here, she's literally holding him by the throat, throttling him, and he just reaches down and rubs her cheek with his hand. And that's what I think, it's that saving grace that causes her to let him go and purge this evil out of herself. And things seem to be good, until, as he says, but you can't get rid of the Babadook, right?
Nope,
as
can't.
Little Sammy gets yoinked up the stairs.
Yeah, you can't. You can't get rid of it. She chases him up the stairs, trying to get in there, and then we get this strength from her that we haven't seen, where she is screaming at the Babadook, telling him he's nothing, and if you touch my son again, I'll kill you.
Yeah, she finally, after all these years, is choosing love and protection instead of wallowing just on herself, to where she is actually caring and worrying and putting that effort and energy into her son.
Yes.
And stands up to this beast, and it collapses onto the floor, but even though it still rises again and flees to the basement, where she locks the door and keeps it down there. Talk about some more of the metaphors and stuff in there, but later. But yeah, because after that, they seem to be back on track. And, the kind of the ending of this movie, she's more attentive, she's caring, she's being kind with Mrs. Roach again, she's got Sam back in school, the child services are back, but they seem happy with the progress, things are good, even if he is a weird, dark little duck, he's being well cared for, so, it's good,
And he speaks his mind,
he does.
He is so open about the fact that his dad died taking his mom to the hospital to have him. He tells multiple people that.
Yeah, it's just a fun little fact that he has.
Yeah. He doesn't hold back. And I think one of the things that we don't really get to see, I think he does remind his mother of his dad. Mm-hmm. And that may be one of the reasons why she doesn't connect with him, because of that loss, that grief that she's feeling, she doesn't want to connect to it. Seeing all of these things, that he does, it just makes her think of what she lost. He's a daily reminder of everything too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but things seem good. They have a new pet. They have a pet Babadook in the basement, so...
Yeah.
You know,
and they
good
collect
times.
food for him.
Yeah.
She soothes it, like, when it gets grumpy. And again, that makes it makes me think of, again, you never really get rid of the grief. It always comes back, but you learn to cope.
Yeah. So here's what I have on that. The idea of the basement Babadook. So it is kind of the point of it. So yeah, whether it's grief or depression or trauma, all of those things, that's what the Babadook is, metaphorically.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it doesn't exist until you know about it, right? Well, not really. It does. But but it's that focus on it that makes it grow. And then once it's there, it's always there. You cannot get rid of the Babadook, right?
No. But you can soothe it.
You can take control over it.
Mm-hmm.
But it can also take control over you if you let it. It's this, you know, and even to the point of, you know, you will hurt yourself and those you love. Not necessarily to the degrees we see in this movie, but it's a good metaphor. I mean, it's always going to dwell in your basement, so to speak, right? You know,
it is.
You take ownership of it. You live with it. Mm-hmm. You have good days, bad days, but you can live that happy life. You know, the line that really hits that home is after she goes down there to feed it and it kind of scares her, it jumps at her, and then she calms it down and she takes control again. And she goes back outside and Sam asks, "How was it?" And she responds, "It's pretty quiet today." You know, like some days it's going to be quiet. Some days it's going to be louder, but remember you're in control overall, right?
Yeah. And she has Sam, and I feel like him, you know, standing strong and not, you know, showing her, I'm not leaving, you know, obviously. I'm not leaving. I'm going to be here. I think when you're going through something really rough, you need that person or people that no matter, you need to know that no matter how upset or how weird or how, you know, depressed you get, it's not going to push that people away. Like, they're going to be there. They're your ride or die people. And I think she has that with Sam. She has that with Mrs. Roach. She's got this little support system that's building to help with Sam, I think, because she's letting people in. I think she's letting people in. And
that's, so I mean, we are not qualified to give psychological and, you know, mental health advice necessarily. But yeah, I mean, from my experience, what I can say to anyone that this maybe, you know, affects in some way or that they really can see themselves in this is, it's like taking that method. So when I say, you know, you just put it in the basement and you take control over it, that doesn't mean that, like, just choose to be happy and you'll be happy.
Yeah,
that's not
work.
what that, no, that's not what I'm saying. And I don't want people to get that wrong.
No.
Because it definitely is, like, mental illness is a illness that has to be treated. And so you're talking about she has Sam and she has this stuff. And I'm sure, because the doctor mentions, I can set you up with a psychiatrist, and she says that's good. We don't ever see the follow through on that.
No.
In my headcanon, I'm going to believe that a part of why things are doing much better is because she's going to see a therapist now, and Sam is getting help, and she's getting her help. You know,
she's getting what she needs.
Yes, because you have to have that support.
You do.
Sometimes you have to have medicine. It's okay to take medicine for mental illness. Don't let that be a stigma.
It is.
I'm going to just throwing those little things out there for people to know, like, whatever help and support and whatever your basement is for you, that's different for everybody, figure that out. And, like, but it's possible.
It is. And I think she's building this world. And I, like you, choose to believe she did, or she is getting the help she needs professionally to make her life better. And that's contributing to this change that we've seen in her. Because it's not like, oh, there's been a light switch. It's changed. She's good now. Everything's good. It doesn't work that way. And I don't think this movie shows it as everything's perfect. In fact, I think it shows you that it's not perfect. And I appreciate that. You know, that not everything is going to be rainbows and unicorns. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's complicated. It's very complicated.
For sure. Well, that is all of my notes about Amelia that I have, plus others that I threw in from other things.
Yeah. We talked about so much of what I had been thinking. Just this whole grief piece of it. Like, I felt like when she went downstairs to take the worms and everything to the Babadook, she was feeding her grief, kind of. Like, we all feed our grief. Anyone goes through loss in their life, no matter big or small. Sometimes you have to feed the grief, you have to let it in, you have to deal with it. And I feel like that's what she was doing when she takes the worms down. At least that's what I choose.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got to see how grief how it can manifest. I mean, she, at times in this film, she was so like, we see her increasingly get more and more like animalistic with the way that she was acting. And that just shows you how intense things can get with grief, or emotion in general. So, she goes through so much. And I think overall that Jennifer Kent did a great job bringing these visualizations to life. I think it captured some of what it can feel like, what people can't see. Because we all have friends too, like, that go through different things, and you can't really understand what they're going through unless you've been through it yourself. But I feel like this movie kind of gave a visualization of what it's like to go through these different stages and what it's like to face them. Whether it's grief or other demons. I appreciated the visualization because I think sometimes people, just like Claire in this movie, they just want you to get over it. They just want you to move on. You're not on their timeline. They want it to be over, and that's not how it works.
Right.
So, let go of your Claires and find your Mrs. Roaches. Like, find that person that's going to be the one that's just going to let you be who you are and let you process it on your own time.
Yeah. Yeah, Mrs. Roach has that line about, she's just like, I know you don't like me to go on about it, so I won't. Mm-hmm. But all I have to say is I love you and I love Sam, and if you need me, I'm here. That's it.
Exactly. And you know what? That is sometimes what someone needs to hear. It's just to know that no matter how weird or standoffish or whatever, that person is not going to leave. They're still going to be there. And I think that can be so empowering to someone going through something, no matter what it is. I think you often feel like no matter what's going on that, well, I'm going to push people away. And it's just, it's a mechanism. It's what we do sometimes. Knowing that the person isn't going to disappear, that they're going, nope, sorry, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be right here. It makes all the difference, because then you think you're alone, and then you realize you're not. And I guess that's what I was really trying to say, is you realize that you're definitely not alone.
Yeah.
And that can make a big difference in how you look at things.
Mm-hmm.
Again, my opinion, I'm not a psychologist.
Right. Do not take official medical and mental health advice from Run for Your Lives.
No.
We are not doctors. We're not doctors. Yeah. How's that for grammar? We're not doctors.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just, we're looking at the movie and making some generalizations.
We may both work in the health industry,
field,
but we're not medical professionals by any standards.
Definitely not. No. It just comes. All of this just comes from like my own experience of my own or others that I know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think that's all I really have on Amelia.
Awesome.
I think she was stronger than she thought she was, and she really showed it.
Yeah, she just had to find it.
And with Sam, I loved his kind of, where we see him at the beginning and where he is at the end, and how much calmer he is.
Mm-hmm.
When he's not seeing the Babadook everywhere, he's
Right.
much calmer, and it's such a difference to see, because he's so adamant about being there for his mother, like saving his mother, protecting his mother.
Even before the Babadook book arrives, the Babadook, even before that's even a thing, he's still on this monster thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of the first things you hear from him in the movie. Almost his first line is, "I'll kill the monster when it comes, Mommy. I'll smash its head in." And I'm like, okay, that's definitely a thing a well-adjusted tiny child should be saying.
Sure. And he always is saying to her, "I don't want anything bad to happen to you, Mom. I'm going to protect you." He's just got such a big heart.
Yeah.
Like even though his mom is not showing him the affection he wants, he's still right there. He wants to protect her.
Yeah. And he is obsessed with those magic DVDs.
Yes.
He's like, word for word, reciting them down in the basement. And his whole, look at my hands, look at the hands, nothing in the hands, nothing in my hands.
He's got his little stuffed animal army set up to watch, they're kind of watching him, his audience, I guess, not army.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Samuel, he'll be the great magician. We'll see him in Vegas in however many years.
Yep.
I mean, come on, even from 6 to 7 years old, 7-year-old Sam has stepped up his magic game. He's already incorporating a live dove. I don't even know how he did that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how he did that either. That just digs into the supernatural part of this movie. I mean, I don't know.
Like, you almost want to, when you see the dove and you're like, now that's a little too much. Then you almost fear for a second. You're like, oh no, she's imagining all this and she's actually still back in the basement or he's dead or something. Like, you're waiting for the other foot to drop and then it goes to credits. And you're like, oh, thank God.
Thank God. It's like, I don't think I can handle it because this poor kid, everything he's gone through with his mother.
Yeah.
I can't. No, it's just not possible.
So I don't have a big arc to talk about with him just because it kind of incorporates a lot into we talked about with Amelia and kind of that. But I have just other notes, like his cousin, Ruby, this little girl is just absolutely horrible to him. Like, here's the thing, working with kids, I'm like, I would never condone any violence or something to a child, like to their face.
Oh, no.
If I was giving a kid advice. But since this is a podcast for adults and Samuel isn't a real person, I can go ahead and say, hell yeah, little dude, talk shit, get hit.
I felt so bad for him. I mean, to me, a lot of times we say that kids imitate their parents or repeat things that their parents have said. So I just think little Ruby is repeating things that she's heard at home.
Mm-hmm.
I did question one thing, though. That treehouse was not that far off the ground. And she went out of it backwards. So how did she end up face down? Explain that to me?
It's those Walking Dead van off a bridge physics.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah. We talked about the car scene where he's seeing the Babadook even though she still can't. In the car, he has that meltdown and that seizure, which leads to, before the seizure part, the why can't you just be normal? Which that moment has been memed so much, and you see it regularly. Even if, unfortunately, the majority of the memes that it gets used in are by bigots with agendas of hate, and it takes a lot of the fun out of it. But, which is then really ironic considering how the Babadook had quite the run as an LGBTQ icon for a while. Which I could get into that, but it is a very complex and convoluted hodgepodge of reasons why the Babadook was featured in the 2017 Pride Parade. It's hard to explain without just reading you an entire article So I'm just going to say, if you're curious, I highly recommend searching it online and going down that rabbit hole. Vox, New Yorker, Rolling Stone, they all have really fascinating articles about the phenomenon of the Babadook becoming a gay icon. But it's kind of amazing.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah.
That's how it sounds fascinating.
Yes. Yeah, I think I've talked about everything else with Sam, really. He fakes taking that pill because he wants to be awake and alert for whatever's coming. He's completely terrified of her. He knows something is wrong.
Yep.
So he's like, no, I'm going to be awake. I'm not going to sedate myself right now because I think, if he would have taken that pill, he wouldn't be here anymore. So
no, definitely not.
He needed to be at his peak, ready to fight. Babadook notes, if you are good on Sam.
I'm good on Sam. I loved the Babadook, the whole creature piece of this.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was pretty terrifying.
Yeah, it's a disturbing little story, this book that appears out of nowhere on his shelf. The scary hat man that knocks in the closet and then comes out and terrorizes you.
Again, at the start of the book, it sounds like he's going to be everyone's friend.
Yeah.
I don't think he's the type of friend you want.
But yeah, it starts with just like little inconveniences. I mean, I don't know. One of the first big things is the glass in the soup, which is not really just a small inconvenience.
No,
it's really fucked
that's
up.
kind of terrifying.
It's worrisome, but again, and Amelia at first is just seeing it as a disturbing problem that Samuel is having. She's like, "What's wrong with my son?" And then on the flip side, like I said, Samuel's over here like, "I'm about to kick some monster ass. Let's go. Give me my ball launcher." He's messing with my mom. I'm gonna go whoop it up.
Yep.
I'm gonna do to this monster what I did to Ruby. I don't care. But yeah, and then when it attacks her in the bedroom, which is also maybe in her head, because then afterwards she wakes up back downstairs in front of the TV. I don't know. But we find out that the Babadook is also like part prehistoric lizard, I guess. Because it's making alligator sounds, and then it has the stock like T-Rex sound from Land Before Time, the sharp tooth or whatever. And plus I think that sound is in like Doom and all kinds of other like things. Like it's like a stock dinosaur sound.
Yeah.
Which kind of takes me out of it a little bit because I'm like, why do they keep using this sound effect?
Yeah.
But
agreed.
It's there. And then I talked about, it uses visions of her late husband, uses his form to really get into her head. That's where you really see like, oh, it's that specific trauma, that grief trigger that's leading to the depression that is the Babadook.
Yeah.
And then I'll finish up my notes and then you can go back and do whatever, which I think I've already talked about Claire. And I didn't care for her. And then the other thing was like Robbie. Yeah, I just said that hopefully her coworker Robbie, because really all we saw of him like at work was great. And then even at the house, he stops by to be nice. And he gets caught up in the middle of her reality of life there, seeing Samuel's kind of a challenge and she is just run ragged with it. And we don't see him after that. He's like, I'll come back at a better time or never. We'll see.
I hope that it's not never because he cared about her. I mean, you could tell that he cared.
But yeah, and that is all I've got.
Well, you know that I've got some good behind the scenes stuff.
Oh, yeah.
At least I think it's pretty good. So, I will kick it off. Jennifer Kent drew inspiration for the Babadook from a personal anecdote shared by a friend. A single mother whose son was deeply affected by an imaginary monster that seemed to lurk in their home. Reflecting on this concept, Kent wondered what would happen if the monster actually existed, at least on some level. And so that inspired her to create the short film Monster, which she did in 2005. And she calls Monster the baby Babadook. This is what paved the way for her to create the Babadook later. She wrote the screenplay in 2009. She wanted to tell the story of facing up to the darkness within ourselves and the fear of going mad, and an exploration of parenting from a real perspective. Babadook is an anagram of a bad book. According to writer and director Jennifer Kent, the Babadook was designed based on stills from the lost film London After Midnight from 1927, and that film starred Lon Chaney. Noah Weissman, who played the traumatized Sam, has only appeared in one full-length feature film, and that is The Babadook. He has only done, I think, one episode of TV and a bunch of shorts. He's really done nothing outside of that.
I could see, maybe this movie really messed with him as a little kid. He was like, all right, I'm good on acting now. I'm gonna go.
Not gonna do this anymore. Thank you. Bye-bye. No more. So Kent revealed that Amelia carries the burden of unprocessed trauma stemming from witnessing a horrific death. So it wasn't just that her husband died, I guess, was the way he died. I mean, because we see this in there, and it looks like his head is sliced off. So what she saw was pretty awful. Ken also intentionally left it open to interpretation for the audience to determine whether the Babadook is a supernatural entity or if it's a manifestation of Amelia's psychological state. I think it's that manifestation. It did add an intriguing layer of complexity to the narrative and invited the viewers to engage in the story on multiple levels.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know if I will go on either side of that fence of saying it's one or the other. I think it's both at the exact same time. Like it could be. I think
it could be.
You know,
I think you're right. I think
it works either way.
Yeah, it does. And I'm okay with it being both. Like, I'm okay with it. Because I just don't think Sam could do that magic trick without it being some, you know. So, Alex Juhas was the graphic designer and illustrator of the pop-up book, Mr. Babadook. To obtain funds for the sets, Kent and Causeway Films, producer Christina Satan, launched a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign in June 2012, with a target of $30,000. They did reach their funding goal through pledgers. 259 backers raised over $30,000. The interior of Amelia and Sam's house was completely built inside the studio. They initially were going to build the first and second floor as separate sets, but since the movie involved all this running up and down stairs, they just decided to build a 2-story set. You know, talking about that just makes me think of Meow Wolf and the house. If you know, you know. The movie featured an exciting campaign that allowed fans to purchase a unique edition of the Babadook pop-up book. The cost was $80. Each of the first 2,000 copies was individually numbered and personally signed by Jennifer Kent. This book not only showcased the captivating pop-up pictures, but also included exclusive additional pages that were not featured in the film. Campaign had a limited run, during which 9,500 were sold, and they did do a rerun in 2021. And finally, and this makes me happy, director Jennifer Kent holds the rights to the film. When asked if there would be a sequel, she said the following: "I will never allow any sequel to be made because it's not that kind of film. I don't care how much I'm offered. It's just not going to happen."
Good.
Good.
Not everything needs to be a sequel.
No, and there doesn't need to be a remake. Leave it alone. This film stands on its own. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. I'm good with it.
I agree.
So that's it.
Well, we Baba did it.
We Baba did it.
Right on cue. We have a little bit of feedback phone.
We do. I'm wondering what's going to be on it.
I hope I don't pick it up and it just goes Baba Duck. So let's hope it's human voices. I'll go see. All right, we have a little bit of feedback this week for the Babadook, which is awesome. Always love hearing from you guys. Daphne, I think we'll take this first one.
I will.
All
so
right.
Megan says, "I just watched this at a friend's house recently. Horror is not my thing. I hated the dog scene and Googled it as soon as I saw the dog in the movie. I've done that too, I have to admit. So I kind of closed my eyes and ears when it happened. Other than that, it was just okay for me. Yeah, if you don't like horror, you probably wouldn't like this movie. So I'm glad that you watched it and you gave it a chance. But I do the same thing with animals in movies because, I'm
sure
not
you
a
might
fan.
already know, but if you don't, Daphne and Megan, because maybe this is what you've used when you say you Google, you do know the existence of a website called doesthedogdie.com.
Yes.
Which is very helpful. And so
It is.
just throw it out there. So yeah, of course, yeah, does the dog die, as the name suggests, we'll let you know that. But that website's good for all kinds of other, like, certain triggers and phobias and things. It's got a whole database of, like, you can search very specific things like that, whether it's specific kind of body horror, like does an eye get stabbed out, or like does it deal with addiction or suicide or things like that. It's got a lot of a range of triggers, from very serious ones to like little small things that just might be a personal hang up. So it's a good website to use for people. So I say, yeah, doesthedogdie.com. You can search any movie before you watch it to find a list of certain things that you may not be happy with if you need it.
I wish I had it before I watched The Butterfly Effect.
Yeah.
That one still has scarred me so bad. Not good.
All right. This next one comes from Harrison, who simply says, "Love this film so much."
Followed by Ginger, who says, "Loved this movie."
All right. And then we have one from Steve Barr, says, "After you record, it's worth listening to the podcast Rose McIver did on the movie." Yeah, there's a lot of other really great podcasts and stuff that have like broken this one down and stuff. I have not heard that one, because I know even here on Podcastica, Jason and Lucy had covered this a couple of years ago and did some really great coverage of it as well. So yeah, lots of great stuff, but always good. Yeah, so thanks, Steve, to point people in other directions. Like, if you're a really big fan of this movie and want to like check out multiple podcasts and people breaking it down from different angles. So yeah, that's thanks for the recommendation on another one to look at.
Absolutely. Well, if you'd like to submit feedback, like Megan, Harrison, Ginger, or Steve, you can do so by finding us on Facebook and Instagram at Run For Your Lives Podcast. You can find us on Twitter, or wait, is it X now?
It's obsolete soon enough, right?
If you find us
who
over
knows?
there at whatever it's called now, it's at RFYL Podcast. You can email us at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. And if you are enjoying the show, please tell your friends. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, pretty much all other podcast players, including YouTube. Go to runforyourlivespodcast.com for all the links you'll ever need. And give us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that is the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, we do. And speaking of sharing the love, of course, got to give some shout outs to things going on in the podcast universe around us. Actually, a lot of podcasting goodness going on this week, which I'm super excited about. Always start off, because I'm selfish. No, I'm kidding. But always start with my other podcast, Strange Indeed. Pay more attention to me. Yeah, if you want to go check out Strange Indeed with me and Rima, we just wrapped coverage of season 6 of Black Mirror this week with the episode Demon 79, which is a Red Mirror episode. So if you're a Black Mirror fan, that means it's something a little different, kind of falls away from their usual formula. It's hard to give a formula to Charlie Brooker and Black Mirror because everything is so wildly different, but it if there is one, it falls outside that a little bit, focuses a little bit more on the like Run For Your Lives aspect of things. Honestly, a little bit more horror, supernatural, thriller kind of stuff. So it was a really fun episode to cover over there. And with that, we are done with Black Mirror. And honestly, we don't have an official plan for what's next. Me and Rima have been talking, and I think we know what we're going to do, but we're still going to take a couple weeks off before jumping into the next direction. But stay tuned. And I will also let you know here on Run For Your Lives what we're doing next as soon as me and Rima decide we can officially announce. And then, yeah, so stay tuned. So we're going to take a little break over there for a few weeks, and then we'll be back with something fun for you. But yeah, speaking of something fun, this week over on Podcastica, within this realm, is it on the Cast of Us feed? Maybe that one, but I know the Yellow Jackets feed. But we're taking advantage of the meme-tastic movie phenomenon happening right now, and there is a Barbenheimer event taking place in the realms of Podcastica and Wilhelm. A little crossover there, with episodes being on both feeds for the Wilhelm podcast and over here on Podcastica, where we have Ben and Kristen covering the movie Oppenheimer for the Wilhelm feed, which is over here as well, and then Jason, Kara, and Penny covering Barbie. So both movies covered at the same time, put on both feeds, giving some love to both. Personally, I haven't seen either yet. I know for a fact I will see them both in due time. I'm excited to, because definitely I already have a feeling, at least when it comes around to early next year with Oscar nominee watches, if I haven't got to them by then, which I probably will, I have a feeling already that both of those movies are going to be up like for all kinds of awards. So yeah, they will happen eventually.
Yeah, I'm hearing really good things, and this is quite a marketing concept that has gone wild. If you think about it, these are two movies that you would probably never think of putting on anything together, and yet it's a thing. Yeah,
I know there's a lot of theaters across the nation that are like doing double feature, like Barbenheimer things. So it's a whole thing. It's hilarious, but I love it. And speaking of those two entities, of course, on Podcastica, the cast of us wrapped up their coverage of Dead City Season 1 this week, with Ben having Penny, Karen, She, and Randy to discuss that final episode of Dead City Season 1. Is there going to be a Season 2? Is there an official word on that? I haven't finished it yet, so I don't want to spoil anything for myself, but maybe, maybe not. I don't know. So there is.
Yeah, there definitely is.
Cool,
it has already been renewed for Season 2. That, I don't think, is an indication of how the season ends, so you just keep watching when you have time.
Yeah, but if you want to catch that Season 1 finale over on the Cast of Us, definitely check that out. Ben's been doing an amazing job Wilhelming that podcast, perhaps. And, of course, the Revisited podcast over... it is a podcast, I think. So, yeah. And then also the Revisited podcast with Ben and Kristen, who did Oppenheimer, like I said. Still working their way through Lost on Revisited. They got Season 6, Episode 10. And they've been continuing on their movie swap cast, their little fun thing there. Episode 2, even though it's like the first official one just on the Wilhelm feed, is out, and I listened to it and loved their conversation that when they did Real Steel and In the Heights, which I love both of those movies for very different reasons, but yeah, it's great. Those are both like really good ones. So that was really fun to watch. I love that they're picking movies that I'm like, oh, I've already seen both of these. Awesome. I can dive in. Their third episode that's coming up next week, or I think next week or whenever they get it, I actually have to watch a movie for that one. I've only seen one of the two, and I'm like, oh god, now I have to actually watch a movie.
You gotta squeeze it in somewhere.
If I have time, I want to. But I'm excited because it's I believe it's Live from Baghdad. It was Kristen's pick, which I have not seen. But then Ben picked Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which you know is my favorite.
No way.
So to hear Kristen's initial reaction of watching that movie for the first time, I'm like, I have to tune into that.
So she's never seen
No,
it.
she hasn't. So it'll be great.
That is a movie that I saw for the first time in a group watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was quite an experience. We did a group watch.
Yeah.
As part of, during the pandemic.
So I'm like, man, I have to like throw Live from Baghdad in somewhere. Because it's Michael Keaton, I believe. Yeah, so like, I gotta find it, throw it in, because I gotta hear her reaction on Scott Pilgrim specifically. So I'm interested. So those have been really cool, so definitely check those out.
You never turn down an opportunity to talk or listen to Scott Pilgrim.
No, absolutely
okay, you
not.
don't.
Yeah.
You're always down for that.
Always. All right. And then you can check out TV Podcast Industries, doing some really cool stuff with Secret Invasion, wrapping that up this week. And then The Witcher Season 3 Part 2 is kicking up, so they will be covering that this week as well as that jumps in. And as far as I know, Good Omens starts like today. It has started as you're listening to this. And they should be covering that maybe I don't know if it's going to be on the TV Podcast Industries feed because it's, I think, just Good Omens Cast, part of a Podcastica thing that Derek and John over there are doing. I will let you know for sure next week what the details are for that. But if you're a Good Omens fan, check that out when that's out. And if you're not, then watch Good Omens Season 1 because it's incredible. It's a quick watch, but it's a lot of fun. So yeah, check those out. And then Adrenaline Cinema. Make sure you check out Mark, where he's got Jamie and Jerry over there with him talking Big Trouble in Little China this week.
Ooh,
classic movie.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in what they have to say about it, though.
Yeah. But that's that for other podcasts. Let's talk about what really matters, which is Run for Your Lives. No, I'm kidding. But of course,
are you though?
You know, we're going to be here for you next week doing something else. So what do we got going on next week?
Okay, so Pake, we are going to check in on the Lambert family, who are trying to get back to their normal lives and are just not able to.
No.
It's disappointing for them because, you know, there was a hitchhiker.
Yeah. Evil's hard to get rid of sometimes.
It is. It is. So, we are going to be discussing Insidious 2. Now, you all knew that Pake was going to talk me into doing this one sooner rather than later because he's really down. So we are going to be discussing this one. James Wan, of course, directed it. Lee Wanell wrote it. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. And we just saw the Red Door together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the two of us were together to get to see that. So, yeah, it was a longer conversation than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, but it was really fun. It's a really good one. So
yeah.
Definitely check that out next week, for sure.
Absolutely. And with that, we have reached the end of our episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Babadook.